and some adventure tourists. But mostly, the most planned form of tourists that they welcoming and each year they're receiving for their event, religious event, it's religious tourists. So in this methodology, we use by questionnaire from March to July and online questionnaire, but we find some social media that it's can distribute and finding the follower of Al-Gilani, and so we gather some information, some data from viewpoint of the tourists that are attending this visit to Baghdad. So 60% of the female responded and 40% of male responded. So among the respondents to the questionnaire in terms of age, most sample are between 30 and 40 years old, which is accounted for 40 years of 40% of the sample, like 160 sample. Then the highest frequency of respondent is in the age of group of 20 and 30 years, which is 50% of the sample. And 32% of the sample, like in 94, are included in also. We gather this information and analyze the result that we find 63% of the respondents are from Iraq because of coronavirus. Of course, we don't have foreigner tourists. It's still now it's some tourists, especially from Turkey and Iran, trying to travel, but few number, according to the observation of my colleague in Baghdad, reported to me. 63% of respondents are from Iraq and have a high frequency. And also 16% of the respondents from Turkey and 14 also from Pakistan. 3 respondents are residents of Iran, Egypt, and Afghanistan, and 90 of them not mentioned their nationality. So the result shows that they're traveling for worship and getting closer to their idea and God purpose by Sufis ideology. And also, respondent interested show the respondent to get familiar with Al-Gilani story. And some tourists also just normal tourists that they travel to Baghdad. So in their visit also attended this to visit this place. And also some other kind of tourist travel. Mostly that they visiting this place, they are Sufis. So Sufi, the only place that they are interested to travel in the world, it's Baghdad, shrine of Al-Gilani. So they have a huge population in different countries. So based on that, it's possible to create international forum of tourism. And also their level of satisfaction with necessary security for tourists, and also satisfaction with the treatment of the local people, the tourists, we evaluate, and also we understood that the local people not well providing service to those tourists, so it's need to empower local people and improve their knowledge of about this kind of perception in order to accept and provide them real information based on other kind of religious tourists. Based on the result of this study, it was determined that if the necessary planning is done, it is possible to establish a sustainable flow of religious tourism from Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, and India, and also other part of the world that Sufis living. So need to specialize some tour operator to focusing on this kind of tourist to provide a service. So, and also infrastructure in this area is not planning too well this kind of tourists. Of course, Baghdad have very well gastronomy, so it's possible to make connection between this kind of tourists and also the gastronomy and other historical buildings to provide them good service, and also enjoying during their worship and also attending their ceremony. So indeed, they announced some challenge also, that they, regarding the security, some of them, especially in other countries, is not secure. Their perception is not clear about the security, but local people in Baghdad, for example, they say it's they have a good environment for tourists to receive, but sometimes because of the political event or some manifestation, of course, they announcing it's not good to plan to receive tourists, foreigner, because of that kind of instability, political issues. But from other side, these kind of tourists, because they have a strong belief to their Sufis and also Shrine of Al-Gilani. So they're traveling with little planning and marketing and promotion. Of course, we can receive and develop this form of tourism in Baghdad in order to distribute religious tourism in different places of Iraq, not just religious cities. So according to that, we come to conclusion that Sufi is a good source of, for generating tourists from different countries to a destination of Baghdad. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question, we'll be happy to explain. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Reza. That was a fascinating presentation, and it was really, really interesting to hear about the research that you've done, but also to learn a bit about Sufi religious tourism, which is something that I think not everybody is aware of, and the potential that it has for tourism development, particularly with the different countries you're talking about as source markets. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. Does anybody have any questions for Reza? If you do, please let me know. You can say so in the chat, or I can unmute anybody who wants to speak. I can't see anybody you can do. I mean, I'll use Chair's privilege to just ask a very quick question. I thought I was very interested, Reza, when you said that this is a form of tourism that locals accept and are quite happy to have, but that actually tourists aren't very satisfied with the level of local services. And I wonder if you think there's a role for sort of local community entrepreneurship in this. Is this a business opportunity for the local community?
Thank you for your interesting question. Indeed, in this regard, we in Iraq, private sector and entrepreneur in this area are not active very well. They are not believing tourists because they have some other kind of income by oil, so they don't convert to tourism strongly. So few people you can find that they have built a business in this area because it's not stable still. So they're receiving money from different sources, so indeed it's not heavy. If they create, also empower local people to have a small business, of course this can be a good sector for Baghdad to have some income, and also to have a source of employment for their local people. And also these people need attention, these Sufis tourists, not just coming in the day, staying in also sometimes in the places that don't have a standard, and no tour operator is specialized in this area, in this kind of Sufis tourists. Of course, in Baghdad, in Najaf, they are strong and they have good hotels and they believe into that kind of form, Shia Muslim that they're receiving, and they are also expending enough money. And also in this sector, in Baghdad, is not heavy. They are trying to learn, but it's still in progress, yes.
Thank you very much. It's a really, really interesting answer. Thank you. If nobody else has any questions, then I'm going to pass the floor over to Ahmad, who's going to present our research. So I'm just going to mute you there, Reza, and bring Ahmad in. Hopefully, Ahmad, you can share your screen. Let me just unmute you. There we go. You should be able to unmute yourself now, I think. There we are. Great. And are you able to share your screen?
Yes, just a second, please.
No. Always slightly nervous about the technology. So if everything's working fine, then we're all happy.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to share part of my screen over here. Thank you so much.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to, unless anyone has anything they want to say, then I'm going to mute myself now and pass the floor over to you.
Okay, just a second, please. Okay. All right. Okay, so thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and it's an honor for me today to be delivering a presentation on our latest study, Developing Dark Tourism in Post-Conflict Destination, the Potential for Lebanon, by both me, Ahmed Anouti from Beirut Arab University in Lebanon, and Dr. James Canal from the University of Greenwich in the United Kingdom. So over 40 years, the Lebanese Civil War started, and it was exactly on the 13th of April, 1975, the 15-year battle which claimed 150,000 lives and maimed 300,000 and forced almost 1 million people to leave Lebanon, drove the country to the brink of collapse. Since 1975, Lebanon has been a focal point for the development of the Middle East. The Civil War was followed by a sustained period of government fragility with the presence of diverse and opposing political sects, has been suffering not only due to the infamous Civil War, but also with many wars that have occurred with neighboring countries during the era of the Civil War. So Lebanon is still suffering from the outcomes of not only the Civil War, but also the many wars that have occurred with neighboring countries, just as I've mentioned in the previous slides. In the last decades, definitely, resulting in violence and death to thousands of people. Political and government instability is one of the foremost consequences of the Civil War. Adding to that, the different security incidents like, for example, the assassination of Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri on the 14th of February 2005. And lastly, on the afternoon of August 4, 2020, the capital of Lebanon, Beirut, witnessed the most devastating non-nuclear blast in history due to the ignition of approximately 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate, which had been stored in Beirut port. Definitely, the blast destroyed the entire of Beirut port and a major part of the capital where buildings, shops, and businesses collapsed, causing the death to more than 180 people. And some people might say that it was more than 200 people, and more than 5,000 were wounded. This blast not only affected the capital and its suburbs with collapsed buildings and shattered glass, but also left the whole country facing a major economic disaster. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, over here in this slide, on the left side, on the bottom left side of this slide, you can see the blast of the Beirut ports. And on the right side, bottom right side of this slide, you can see the results or the consequences that was only in Beirut ports, regardless to say of what happened to almost all the capital of Beirut. So one previous slide study has considered the market for dark attractions in Lebanon using a domestic survey and key informant interviews. This study found that dark tourism had potential for incorporating into tourism development in the country, but that knowledge of this sector was low amongst key stakeholders and only identified 4 potential sites. This study was done by Mr. Ghabban in 2015. So in this study, or in our study, a more brand approach was taken to mapping potential resources for dark tourism development linked to recent conflicts and disasters, while using Stone's study in classification of supply side of phenomenon, creating a resource for future tourism planning in the destination. This approach is based on work on literary tourism and dark tourism, and is based on a desk audit of potential sites for development within a dark tourism product. So, according to Stone, the study of Stone 2016, dark tourism involves encountering spaces of death or calamity that have political or historical significance and that continue to impact upon the living. So Stone proposed a seminal topology of the characteristics of dark tourism supply, which he called the 7 dark suppliers, as we can see over here, ladies and gentlemen. So this research has used this typology to map the potential dark tourism product of Lebanon, and also adding one more, which is the dark disaster sites. So let's have just a kind of a small definition or introduction for these sites. So the dark fun factories are attractions and sites at the lighter end of dark tourism, which have a focus on primarily on entertainment, like haunted houses, haunted mansions, haunted villages. The dark exhibitions are very common products within dark tourism offerings and destinations, taking an educational approach which is towards tragedy and can be found within larger museums. The dark dungeons present sites and stories associated with justice systems like dungeons, jails, and prisons. Dark resting places are locations with grave markers or cemeteries. The dark shrines share many characteristics with dark resting places. The dark conflict sites are locations associated with wars and other battles that can be visited by tourists. And dark camps of genocide, which are locations that have genocide, atrocity, and catastrophe as their main theme. Last but not least is the dark disaster sites, which are sites linked to natural or man-made disaster, just like the incident of Beirut ports that we have just seen in the previous slide. So over here, we do have some photos presented to you, ladies and gentlemen, as examples of different sites related to dark tourism, like the recent Syrian civil war, which can surely result in future dark tourism sites, the Auschwitz concentration camp, and lastly, we do have the Hiroshima Memorial Park, which was linked with the nuclear bomb that was thrown on the city. Okay, so we go on to the aim of our research. So the aim of this research is to investigate the potential for dark tourism to contribute to destination recovery in Lebanon, a country that suffered from multiple historical and recent conflicts, a devastating explosion that left much of the capital city in ruins, and most recently, a crippling economic crisis resulting in hyperinflation, which is considered to be the highest in the world according to Bloomberg data. Over here, as you can see the pic, some of you might be wondering what's the purpose of the picture of the bus over here. The picture in this slide represents the Ain al-Rumana bus, where all Lebanese people agreed that the civil war sparked with the incident of the bus massacre when the Phalangist party opened fire and killed 27 Palestinians and wounded 19. So the conceptual or the theoretical framework. This slide shows the 4 areas of literature that we have drawn to develop a conceptual framework for our research. 2 of these areas are related to the context of Lebanon, which are the post-disaster and post-conflict destination. Although the literature on these topics has a lot of crossover, there are some specific features of each That means that we have dealt with them separately. For example, the post-conflict destinations often leave a legacy of very complex stakeholders management, and that is not always the case in a post-disaster destination, which could be very politically stable. So some research, for example, on Haiti considers both of these contexts together, and our research adds to this emerging area. The other two areas are more clearly situated within the tourism development literature. So dark tourism is the particular type of tourism that we have looked at, drawing on the post-conflict and post-disaster resources in the country, and destination recovery is the literature that we have drawn on to help us consider the future of the destination. So there is a lot of research taking place at the moment into destination recovery, post-COVID, and we hope that our research can contribute to the area. So the methodology over here to investigate the potential for dark tourism to provide a resource for the recovery of Lebanon. In this post-conflict, definitely in post-disaster context, an exploratory research design was developed. So the design of our research followed a three-phase methodology. Phase one involved scoping the study and identification of potential sites through desk audit and research. Phase two included archival research and key informant interviews with informants chosen for their experts' knowledge on the recent history of Lebanon and its conflicts. And last phase, which is mapping potential resources for dark tourism development linked to recent conflicts and disasters using stone study, which was introduced in slide number 5. So the results, this study has identified, as a matter of fact, 21 potential dark tourism sites were identified. 1 dark fun factory, 5 dark exhibitions, 1 dark dungeon, 3 dark shrines, 7 dark conflict sites, 3 dark camps of genocide, and 1 dark disaster site. So the figure over here, as you can see, presented our research findings in 4 columns, which are the category, the name, the location, and finally the dark context. Moving on to the results, following this categorization, an interactive map was created using the Google